Perfect. So I know this, but if you two, Jeremy, I'll start with you. Just kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you both, if you don't mind.
Sure. My name is Jeremy Falk, and I live in Los Angeles. I grew up in Minneapolis, and I started when I got to when I got to California around the age of 1993. I started a small business that I called MacMan um, at a time when Apple was a much smaller company and not successful. And and so now I just crossed over 30 years doing the same thing, and I do it now from Los Angeles. Um, so I introduce my dad as well, or have him introduce himself.
Fred, if you don't mind, I understand you're still in Minnesota.
I'm in Minneapolis area.
And just tell me, if you don't mind, about Jeremy and how I understand you kind of watched as his love for Macs and computers kind of took off.
I did. I think Jeremy was introduced to Apple in either junior or senior high school. And we purchased an Apple at a store in Uptown. And Jeremy embraced the Apple method of computing and kept loyal to Apple and developed his business around Apple and has been very successful all these years.
And Fred, if you don't mind me asking, it seems like common knowledge today in 2024, but 40 years ago, as a parent, to buy a computer for your kid, that had to have been a revolutionary idea, or maybe even an expensive idea. Just walk us through 40 years ago buying a computer for your child. What kind of experience was that like?
It was actually a very exciting experience. Jeremy had a strong interest. I had an interest in computing, but not familiar with Apple, more on a mainframe side. And as a young student, Jeremy was pretty clear that he would enjoy and benefit from it. And we talked it over, and it felt like it was expensive, but it felt important to be there at that time as technology it was taking off, and we enjoyed doing it together.
And then Jeremy, tell me, I understand you were 11 at the time, if I remember correctly. Walk me through, did you see the 1984 ad during the Super Bowl? Where did your interest, in the original Mac come from?
Sure. So I would have been 11 in 1984 when Apple released its first um, successful attempt at a computer called Macintosh. At the time, it was in its infancy, and it was and I did not only see the Super Bowl ad, although I have no memory of that, but I'm going to say that I saw it, and now that poster is on my wall in my office. 20 years later, Apple slightly augmented that poster to include an iPod. So they made a poster with that same 1984 film reference that was the Super Bowl commercial. And over the years, I've curated a small personal Apple museum, and that's one of the main pieces.
What was that like as an 11-year-old to know that your parents were going to get you a computer? Were you the only kid in school who had a Macintosh, or what was it like from your perspective 40 years ago?
Um, it's a good question. What I can tell you is that um, when I was a little boy, when I was 11 years old, and we went to this local computer store before Apple, long before Apple had their own stores, I was probably just purely excited. Uh, from the moment I was introduced to these products that Apple was making, I was immediately enamored. and totally engaged. It was one of maybe the first times in my life where I was clearly drawn to the way that it looked, the way that it functioned, the clear engineering and design that goes into it. So I think the best way I could describe how I felt was I was probably just extremely excited and spent a lot of time playing with it, using it, and of course also taking it apart.
Fred, did you get any time on the Macintosh at all, or did Jeremy kind of take it over and that was his computer, his thing, his love?
I didn't spend much time on it. I think it was pretty much Jeremy's. So I was just impressed with how enamored he was with it and its functionality and how smooth it operated to whatever he wanted to do with it.
And just looking back, Fred, taking a big picture look 40 years later, seeing where Apple is today and all the products they're launching, that headset next week, the spatial computing and all that stuff. I mean, what do you make of just the evolution of Apple and technology over the last 40 years?
I think it's been phenomenal. There's probably never been a company quite like Apple that has evolved, even though it has had a few speed bumps. It has grown to be the first or the second $1 trillion valued company. Its products has changed the world, including the iPhone, the iPod, as well as its other computing and computers and other products. So I'm just blown away by it and have followed it all the years. There was a time when Jeremy wanted to buy stock in Apple when Apple was struggling, I think after Steve Jobs left. And I told him I didn't think it'd be a good investment because the company was failing. But his loyalty to Apple caused him to feel that it was worth it. And he made an investment in Apple, and I didn't. And he's never forgotten that and has regularly shown me how well he's done because he held on to the stock. And he's embarrassed me many times in front of friends and relatives. So
Yeah, I actually answered that question. Somebody asked me if I got in a time machine, what I'd do, and I'd say to go back in time and buy Apple stock. That's the thing you do. Jeremy, tell me, you are now known as the Mac Man. So I'm assuming that Apple, the Macintosh, that experience 40 years ago must have had some kind of, I don't say life changing, but it sounds like it was a life altering, life influencing event there. What can you draw the parallels to 40 years ago to where you are today?
Sure. I went to a community college when I first moved to Northern California, and I took a course about writing a business plan. And my company, MacMan, was formed. And I just feel like I was super lucky to find a path uh, at a very young age, something that I was totally drawn to, something that really seemed to get along with my neurodivergence and my desire to be of service. And I, I, I don't know what I would have done had the company failed or stayed small, or the need for Apple consultants or Apple support wasn't really out there. I mean, I just feel so grateful that I found a path that has never slowed down and has always been super fulfilling to me. Uh, this headset that you refer to, actually, let me go back 1 second. The stock that my dad refers to, I did buy stock in the 90s, very few shares with all the money that I had. And I did ask my dad, hey, can you like match me or support me in this? Because I think it'd be nice to be able to buy more. And he wasn't interested in that. So I did buy my small amount of shares. And that's the only shares I've ever purchased. So 30 years later, my tiny little emotional purchase is something I'm still is like it's not something I touch. It's something that to me is a reminder of when I was super young and attraction, this magnetic attraction that I had to this company and their products never stopped, and exponentially increased in my fulfillment, and certainly in the way that they are as a company in the world, and right down to my family and me.
And I don't want to ask you for specific numbers because I know it's an impolite question to ask, but I mean, it begs the question. Your dad brought it up. There was that time where this company almost went out of business. So that emotional purchase, I gotta assume it's paying off for you. Is there any more context you'd like to put
Sure.
around that?
Sure. It is paying off. And the way it pays off is I get to continue to show my dad how uh, uh, how what a blunder it was for us to not go all in that moment. Uh, when I had to be in my low 20s when I actually made the purchase, and I purchased um, about 19 shares of stock at a time when they were about $19 a share. And that's what I'll share here. Um, it has been a joy to watch something so little and something like a seedling turn into something that has flourished, and and I don't touch. I want to repeat that I don't touch it. It's there for me. It's like an emotional purchase. It's in my investments. It's something that I just get a lot of pleasure out of seeing where this has gone and just considering where it could go.
What I guess you kind of touched on this already, but just overarchingly, what do you love about the company? What do you like about where they are today compared to they were then? Can you just give us a little bit about just your thoughts and feelings on Apple as a whole?
Sure. A long time ago, so Apple has these events once a year. They're called Worldwide Developer Conference, WWDC. And this is their like June event. It's our largest event of the year. It's when they announce all the new operating systems, typically across all their platforms, and creating a lot of hype. And it's where all the developers come together and under one roof and collaborate and inquire and solve problems and show what they're working on. So a lot of years ago, maybe in the early 2000s, Steve Jobs was giving the keynote at that year's WWDC, and someone in the crowd, it was not big back then. It was this little, it wasn't a big deal like it is now. And he was doing a Q&A, and someone in the crowd asked him a question that I always was curious how he answered questions, because the questions were never softballs. They were always hardball questions. And he responded, whatever the question was, he responded with, Apple is a company of engineers. And in that simple sentence, I got something about his motivation, his mission statement, his intentions behind this thing that he started from a garage, which was that this is a company that is engineered and designed. And that to me is so few companies out there are doing something from a designed and engineered standpoint. And I mean, I'm looking right now at my original Macintosh that my dad bought for me. And it still to this day looks remarkable. Uh, the way that this product is designed from the inside out and from the outside in, um, there's never a spot where you don't see that, where you can't see thought. Like everywhere you look, there's just thought that was involved, engineering and design, and creativity. And that to me, it sort of sings to me. I love that there's so much intention and thought and consideration going into each and every product, including in the way that they, uh, face their public and how they respond to the public and how they choose to transmit whatever they are coming out with or responding to some issue. I always feel like now with Tim Cook running the company, it feels like there's a ton of heart behind that company, a ton of heart. And so for me, I just have every product in general. I look at it and it seems to have such care involved and such design thought and such engineering, and it really continues to blow me away.
Fred, let me bring you back in here for a second. Let me ask you this. I think one of the great things about this story is, as a parent, you took your kid to the store, got him a computer, and it obviously was a life-changing moment. What would you say to parents out there who, we're in a different world right now, but it sounds like it all kind of started with a good parent doing a good thing and encouraging, interest in technology and new technology and new things. And here we are 40 years later, your son's the Mac man. Just what do you make about this journey and this path that all started in a computer store in Minnesota?
I'm not quite sure what to say to parents other than to encourage their children to follow their dream and to support them. I do remember when Jeremy was in San Francisco and he was working in a computer store, an Apple reseller.
Right.
And at that time, a lot of the computers were being purchased by women and taking the computers home, and men. And often they would ask their salesperson, could someone install it for them? They didn't feel comfortable. And someone, maybe Jeremy's supervisor, asked him to be interested in taking some time and going to a customer's house and installing the computer. Apple computers, by their nature, you can almost put them together without much effort. Jeremy went to someone's home and hooked up the computer, and he told me later that it was a nice experience. And I asked him, how much did you charge? Well, he said, as I remember, I make about $10 an hour in the store, and it was about 3 hours. So I charged her $30. And I said, no one wants a consultant that charges $10 an hour. You have to increase it to at least $30 an hour. And he didn't think that was such a good idea at the time. That's it.
I'm gonna add to that story if you don't mind, Alan.
Yeah.
That's one of the most important aspects of myself, my company, and why this keeps working for me is that I always leaned on my dad. He's a retired, successful business person in a massive way to me, and I've always leaned on him for how to navigate a tiny business. My father, Fred, comes from the corporate world of his own creation, his own company. And so he has this skill set that is quite invaluable to me. And it's also what he did in his career is quite different than what I do in my career. And through talking with him over not only my life, but through my MacMan years, I've always learned about valuing my time, respecting um, uh, boundaries with my work, balancing personal and work life. It goes on, but I don't, my little company has, if it's had success at all, it's because of the team that is and was my family, my mother being a huge part of it too. And so when my dad mentioned this story that I can't quite recall at the moment, but I do know that I worked at this computer selection company in downtown San Francisco in sales, again, long before there was an Apple store. I That was the beginning of me learning through my dad how to value my time. And that has become a critical part of what it means to be a professional in the pro IT industry.
I'll ask you kind of a two-part question here, Jeremy, as we kind of wrap things up here. I think it's also important, I mentioned the Vision Pro headset coming out officially next week. We're looking at computers in our field of vision and using tapping and touching things with a headset on our faces. I'm looking at the press release from 1984, and Apple says, users tell Macintosh what to do by simply moving something called a mouse. And they had to introduce that concept to people. And here we are 40 years later, and we've got things we're strapping to our faces. So as we look back in the past, this 40th anniversary, we also look forward to that headset next week. So I wonder if you could kind of just talk about how radical 40 years ago a mouse was, something that I'm using literally right now. Everybody's got one, to this new frontier that they're trying to launch next week.
Yeah, I'm guessing right now you're using a trackpad, and I could be wrong. There might be a mouse in front of you, and most of us now gone to a trackpad. This Apple Vision Pro that comes out next week, it is, I think, no coincidence that it is released on my birthday. 40 years anniversary of Apple, and this next level, this almost like a future product is coming out now in its absolute infancy, but has unlimited possibilities that I don't think even any of us can see yet. And what I like about this product coming out is that it is being very careful to not be part of this sort of nomenclature of AI world, but rather it's connecting you to your environment, using your technology. You're using your eyes, you're using your hands, and you are not blocked off from your environment. Every other headset that's available, you are in your own universe only. You are disconnected from your environment. With this product, your eyes are available, and you are available to your environment and to other people for shared experiences, collaboration, and not just going into another place or time in space in game. So for me, this is, again, a lot of thought and a lot of care and engineering has gone into this upcoming product. And I'm just waiting for them to call me and explain to me why they chose my birthday to release the product.
It's crazy to think, like I was saying, 40 years ago, the mouse, that was a revolutionary idea. Now we're talking about hands and things, thinking normal things.
That's
It's
right.
kind of exciting to think where we're going to be in the next 40 years, right? 40 years from now, whatever year that's going to be, 2064. It's hard to even imagine, right?
I'll be older than my dad, and I cannot imagine that. And I pray that we're all still here together and thriving in life and in business. The I have this mouse, that my Macintosh 128K over here on the shelf. I had the original mouse that it came with, and it is, though quite similar to today, it is remarkable how far we have come from the wire that was required then to now, almost just hands in the air, like next level wireless.
It's incredible. I'm going to ask you both for some closing thoughts. Fred, as we celebrate the 40th year of the Mac in the future, and technology and just how far we've come, is there any other thoughts you'd like to share with us about the endless march of progress?
Well, personally, I hope they bring back the 27-inch iMac because it was discontinued. And I hope I don't have to purchase a different type of Apple system to get there. I think that the vision at Apple and the technology that is evolving is going to take us to a place that is hard to imagine. Appreciate your time, Alan.
Thank you for your time, Fred. Jeremy, any closing thoughts about just, where we've been the last 40 years and where we could go the next 40 years?
I guess in a word, it's gratitude. Uh, I am grateful for this company and what they've brought to the world, and how it's helped to seemingly connect us in a positive way, and giving me a purpose and a long career that is not over, and has offered so many moments for me and my mother before she passed, my father now, and and because of this company, because of Macintosh, because of um, my magnetic draw to it, my father and I have had a lot of shared time and fun and work and joy from this. And I just say full steam ahead.
Sounds good. I appreciate it both. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording here.